At 25, you can drift off course and still recover easily. At 55, the stakes are higher and the patterns are deeper. Most of us men avoid the hard questions that could redirect our lives, not because we don't know better, but because we're not ready to be honest with ourselves about what we already know. Here are 8 questions men over 50 are afraid to ask themselves. Be sure to drop a comment if any of these resonate with you. 1. What's the one thing you know you should stop doing, and what's the real reason you're still doing it? You already know what it is. The drinking that's become a nightly ritual instead of an occasional pleasure, the porn habit that's killing your interest in real intimacy, the job you hate but keep showing up to because leaving feels impossible, the relationship patterns that drain you but feel familiar. Most men avoid this question because they've gotten comfortable lying to themselves about why they continue destructive behaviors. We tell ourselves it's stress relief, or that we don't have other options, or that it's not really that bad. But underneath those stories is usually something much harder to face. Maybe you're medicating emptiness you don't want to acknowledge. Maybe you're avoiding the discomfort of change because the unknown feels scarier than the familiar dysfunction. Maybe you're punishing yourself for failures you've never processed. The cost of not asking this question honestly: we stay trapped in patterns that slowly erode our self-respect while telling ourselves stories that sound reasonable but aren't true. And every day we continue, it becomes harder to believe we're capable of being the man we want to be. 2. If you lost everything tomorrow, your job, your money, your status, who would you be, and would you respect that man? This question terrifies most men because their entire sense of worth is scaffolded around externals. Take away the title, the salary, the house, and the reputation, and many men realize there's not much left that they recognize as themselves. When we've spent decades building an identity around what we do rather than who we are, our value comes from our productivity, our problem-solving ability, our capacity to perform and provide. But none of that is actually you. When men hit financial crisis, job loss, or health problems that strip away their external markers of success, they often fall into depression or panic, not because they've lost everything, but because they realized they never developed a sense of self that existed independent of those things. The man underneath all of our achievements, our character, our integrity, our capacity for connection, our wisdom, that's what would remain. And if we can't respect that man, then we've been building our lives on a foundation of sand. 3. What's the most important conversation you've been avoiding, and what are you afraid will happen if you finally have it? Every man has one. The conversation with your wife about how disconnected you become, the talk with your adult child about something that happened years ago that still sits between you, the discussion with your boss about what you need to actually stay engaged at work. We avoid it because we've convinced ourselves that not talking about it is protecting everyone involved. But really, we're protecting ourselves from outcomes we can't control. We're afraid she'll say she's been unhappy too. We're afraid he'll confirm that we damaged him. We're afraid they'll say no. But here's what avoiding that conversation actually costs. The relationship slowly dies from the poison of things left unsaid. The distance grows, the resentment builds. What you're trying to protect by staying silent is being destroyed by your silence. Most of the outcomes we're afraid of are already happening in slow motion. The conversation you're avoiding isn't the risk. Continuing to avoid it is the guarantee that nothing will improve. 4. What's a major ambition you've given up on, and what story are you still telling yourself to justify why you never tried again? You had dreams once. Maybe you wanted to become an entrepreneur, write a book, travel extensively, learn to play guitar, build something meaningful. But somewhere along the way, practical concerns took over, and those ambitions got filed away under someday or unrealistic. Now you tell yourself stories about why it was smart to give up. I had responsibilities. It was too risky. I wasn't talented enough. It seemed selfish. These stories sound mature and responsible, but underneath the rational language is usually just fear. The truth, most men give up on our ambitions not because we tried and failed, but because we never really tried. We let the fear of failure masquerade as rational planning. We confused having reasons with having excuses. And what we're protecting isn't our egos from disappointment. We're protecting ourselves from discovering what we're actually capable of. And that protection is costing us the chance to find out who we could become if we stopped playing it safe. 5. What have you become that your younger self would have looked at with disappointment, and why? Your 25-year-old self had ideas about what kind of man he'd become. He had standards about how he'd treat people, what he'd stand for, and how he'd handle challenges. He had fire, principles, and a vision for his life that felt non-negotiable. But over the years, you've made compromises, and some were necessary. Life is more complex than young men understand. But some were just the slow erosion of standards under the pressure of convenience, fear, or exhaustion. Maybe you become the kind of man who stays quiet when he should speak up, who chooses comfort over courage, who's more concerned with avoiding conflict than standing for something meaningful, who settled into a version of masculinity that's more about getting by than rising up. And this isn't about perfectionism or impossible standards. It's about noticing how far we've drifted from the values we once treated as non-negotiable. That young man's disappointment isn't judgment. It's a compass pointing us back toward the man we meant to become. 6. What's the one resentment you can't let go of, and what control does it still have over your life? You carry it like a stone in your chest. Maybe it's toward your ex-wife or how she treated you during the divorce. Maybe it's toward your father for never giving you the recognition you needed. Maybe it's toward a friend who screwed you over. Maybe it's toward yourself for choices you can't undo. You tell yourself you've moved on, but the truth is that resentment is still running your life from the background. It influences how you treat new relationships, how you make decisions, how you see yourself and the world. And you think you're protecting yourself by holding on to it, but you're actually imprisoned by it. The cost isn't just the emotional weight we carry, it's the opportunities we miss because we're still fighting old battles. The connections we can't make because we're still armored against pain that's not even coming from this moment. The growth that can't happen because we're too busy guarding against the past. We don't have to forgive and forget, but we do have to stop letting something that already happened control everything that hasn't happened yet. 7. What's a major life choice you made because it was the right thing to do, and is it still the right thing for the man you are today? 20 years ago, you made decisions based on who you were then and what seemed right at the time. You chose a career path that offered security. You stayed in a relationship because you'd made a commitment. You took on responsibilities because that's what good men do. But you're not the same man who made those choices. Your values have evolved. Your understanding of what matters has deepened. Your priorities have shifted. Yet you're still living as if those old choices are permanent and unchangeable. Maybe that career that offered security is now suffocating your spirit. Maybe the commitment you honored has become a prison for both you and your partner. Maybe the responsibilities you took on have become excuses to avoid the life you actually want. This isn't about abandoning duty or becoming selfish. It's about recognizing that blind loyalty to past decisions can become a betrayal of who we're becoming. Good men can and should make different choices as they grow and learn. The question is whether we'll keep defaulting to duty or start living by design. 8. If your son or a younger man modeled his life after yours, would that be a gift or a warning? This question cuts through every excuse and rationalization because it forces you to see your life from the outside, not with judgment, but with clarity. You might be a decent man, you might have done your best with the information you had, but if someone you cared about followed your exact path, your relationship patterns, your emotional habits, your ability to speak your truth, your approach to conflict, your relationship with your own needs, would you feel proud or would you cringe? We avoid this question because it challenges the comfortable narrative that just doing your best is always enough. But legacy isn't just what we leave behind when we die, it's what we model while we live. Our kids absorb far more from watching how we show up than from anything we tell them. And this isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming intentional, about asking whether the way we've learned to be a man is something we'd actually recommend to someone whose life we care about. The good news, we still have time to become men we'd be proud to see others emulate. not through grand gestures, but through small daily choices that shape character. And if this video was helpful, please like it. If you're a middle-aged guy trying to live a better second chapter, be sure to subscribe for more content like this.